your insecurities become so much less when you're in scripture.
Like instead of focusing on what you want to do today, like focus on what God wants to do today.
It starts with questioning, oh, why are they hanging out? And then they hang out again, and so you're like, oh, so they hate me. No, that's not what it is. Like, sometimes people just need to hang out and they're not going to invite you to everything.
I think it's something you will always struggle with, but you can consistently overcome it. Hello and welcome to the Living Life for Real podcast. I'm your host, Evelyn Byers, and today I have a guest with me, Aaliyah Brown. Her twin sister, Aaliyah Brown, was on the podcast a few episodes ago. And today we're actually recording at her house in her guest bedroom. So yeah, the scenery is a little different. So yeah, different scenery, same podcast, same face, different girl.
It's true. Yeah, I'm excited to do this with you.
It'll be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
So for today's episode, we're going to be talking about like comparison and like insecurities and kind of just like how to navigate all of that, because I feel like it's something that is so common. Like everybody struggles with it to an extent, like in one way or another. And I feel like, some people, it's like they compare like their popularity, or they compare their financial status, or maybe they compare their appearance. But I feel like everybody like struggles with it in one area or another.
Yeah, definitely. I think comparison is something that, is a daily thing. It's not just, something you struggle with here and there. Comparison can be every little thing.
So yeah, Aaliyah and I are just going to kind of, talk about how we've struggled with certain areas in our own lives when it comes to comparison. And yeah, I'm going to just ask her some questions, and I'll probably have my own feedback too about those. But yeah, for my first question, have you ever fallen into the jealousy trap, like when it comes to money? And like, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially now with like buying a car, it's something I've been like, oh, some people get a car handed to them where I have to pay for all of it. So I've recently been like, that's pretty unfair. I wish I had this, but I have to, do this myself. And that's been something that I've been like, whoa, you're different. You're not. Everybody's family does things differently. So yeah, definitely. I mean, money used to be something that I wasn't worried about, but like getting older, I have become a lot more like, trying to understand why some people get some things and why I don't have that. It's like, it's okay. We're all in different paths and different families, so things are going to look different for everyone. And so recently I've been learning, to be content with what I have rather than wishing I had what someone else had. So yeah, definitely. Recently, definitely a lot more. And it's been eye-opening recently for me, but yeah, I'd say yes.
Yeah, I would say for me too, like the same, like even recently, like even I can struggle with it, like even in like the past week, I would say, but it's something like you constantly have to like refresh your mindset with over and over again, because I feel like you're always going to fall into that comparison or like jealousy trap. You just got to catch it, and like it'll become easier and easier to catch it. But I would say like even recently, like, just a little example. Like recently, I was planning on getting like new sandals, and I wanted to get like Birkenstocks, but like I just did not have the money to like spend on Birkenstocks when there were other things I wanted to buy too, and so like I ended up just getting some knockoffs. And for me, it was kind of like, dang, why are other people able to just like get these Birkenstocks? Like, why are other people's like families able to just afford to buy them Birkenstocks for like no reason? But then I had to just kind of refresh my mindset and think like, okay, well, everybody's financial status is different, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me. Like if other people are judging me for having knockoff Birkenstocks, then maybe those aren't the kind of people I want to be like worried about the opinion of, kind of a thing. And so I just had to like realize, you know what, it's okay. Like everybody has different things and everybody's situation is different. Like
Yeah.
I'm blessed more than some other people, but maybe some other people are more blessed in other areas than me. And so it's kind of like, you can't really compare your
Hmm.
situation to somebody else's situation.
Yeah. Like sometimes I'm like, I'm over here price comparing, and then somebody can go and buy something and not even have to look at the total, and I'm like, what? But, you know, I'm like, hey, price comparing is not a bad thing.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think, we can look at other people's lives and be like, oh, they can buy this, they can buy that. Especially as teenage girls, we
Mhm.
want all those things, but it's like, we don't really need all those things. And there's also like consumer culture is a thing. Someone has this, so it's kind of the like, I need to have that too. You don't need to have it. I don't need to
Mhm.
have it.
Exactly. Now, can you name a time when you compared yourself to someone and how did you handle that? And be honest, like whether you handled that well or you didn't handle that well, like either way.
Mm. Oh, yeah. So, 2 years ago, I went to a summer camp, and, walking into it, it was a regular camp kind of thing. It was my third year, I think, and, this is my first high school week. So, I had never been in like a high school camp. I didn't expect it to be much differently, but it was because the girls were very different from the middle school experience I had, and so these girls would put on full faces of makeup every morning and constantly be talking about their hair, this or that, wanting to go back to the cabin to put more makeup on, and whereas me, I was not wearing makeup at that point, so I was like, should I be? Should I be concerned about how my hair looks? And so that whole week, self esteem was pretty low because of there were quite a few girls who were so like in the midst of that, so concerned about how they looked. And so that, I'm not going to say they like brought me down with them, but it definitely made me wonder like, they're so worried about this. Should I be worried about this? So I started comparing the way I got ready in the morning and what I put on to how they did things, and that became kind of exhausting. And it wasn't only a 5 day camp, but it was just, I almost like was seeking their validation, in the mornings, like be like, oh, what are they gonna say? Because they would like come up and be like, oh, I love this about you, or I love that about you.
Mm-hmm.
But I also at the same time wondered, I'm doing things way differently, so can that be true? And so I was just like really thinking about like, how can I get these girls to like me and think that without those things I'm good enough. And so that whole week became pretty messy for me, but then I realized and snapped out of it by the end of the week. But still, that was a very distracted time for me because I wasted a lot of time thinking about someone's opinion that really didn't matter. And so, yeah, yes, definitely. That was not a good time for me. And I didn't catch it till, it was too late. And I realized the headspace I was wasting with all that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, there have been similar situations for me as well. I feel like, again, when I started wearing makeup was after, like, I saw a bunch of other people wearing makeup and I was like, oh, maybe I need to be wearing makeup. And, like, I felt like more insecure. It was never like I started wearing makeup because I just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
or just because, like, I don't know, like, I just felt more comfortable in it. It was just because I felt like I should because everybody else was. And I don't feel like that's necessarily healthy. I mean, it's not necessarily healthy to only wear makeup because that's the only way you feel value either.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, there's multiple reasons to wear it that are unhealthy, but, and I'm not saying that makeup is like bad,
Mm-hmm.
like, because, I think it's okay. And I think it's okay to like want to like look your best, but I also definitely think that a lot of it just comes from wanting to be accepted. And I feel like that's where it can be tricky and it can become a trap.
No, yeah, definitely. Um, for me, going into the makeup thing, I wasn't allowed to start wearing makeup till I was, I think, 15, and before like I started, getting makeup, my mom was like, "So why are you like?" She asked me why I wanted to wear it or the reasons behind it. And before we did that, she like sat me down. She gave me she gave me a talk about like, "Hey, you don't need this, but if that's what like, you want to do to make you, just reasons for makeup, wanting to do it just cuz, but like, not relying on it and not like, you know, if I started wearing it feeling like I had to put it on every day, I think with things like that, as long as, your mindset is, good and you have a healthy balance with wearing it and not wearing it, I think it's a very okay thing, but it is also one of those things where these girls felt like they had to put it on every morning
Mm.
to feel like they could walk out the door. And I think at, at that point it's at an unhealthy spot. So I think when we can like step back and see that we're at an unhealthy spot with things that we're doing, like comparing ourselves in that sense, I think that's when, you know, being self-aware is the first step to that. So, catching it before it's, you know, literally going outside every day, but not going out unless you have a full face or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Like there were times when I felt like um I needed to wear like more makeup and like I had to wear it like every single day, but I've gotten to a point where like, some days I wear it, some days I don't, and I'm like comfortable with myself either way. And I think
Yeah,
that's just the point where you have to get like, yeah, it's okay to wear makeup, but you just have to realize that you don't need it.
yeah, for sure.
Have you ever been like jealous of like another friend group, or like maybe you had a friend who had like another friend group? Like, were you ever like just jealous of that? And like, how did you handle that?
Mm, Maybe not like totally jealous of different friend groups. I don't feel like that's something I struggle with, but it's more like when people within the friend group, like when
Mm,
they can pair off, and
yeah, like
that's
FOMO.
yeah, that's not a it's not a bad thing. But like sometimes you question like, why do they hang out all the time and I'm not invited? But you're not going to be invited to every last thing, and that's okay. Like
Mm-hmm.
some people are just going to click better, and so you're going to hang out, with different people at different times.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't think it's a huge struggle for me, just because I know it's not something that should be in my headspace. But I have seen it affect other friends when they get jealous of other friend groups, and
Mm-hmm.
like mainly because I was maybe the one hanging out and someone got jealous. I think I'm very like aware of how easily that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I really try not to, feel that way, because when you feel that way you can question a friend group. Like
Mm-hmm.
it starts with questioning, "Oh, why are they hanging out?" And then they hang out again, and so you're like, "Oh, so they hate me." No, that's not what it is. Like sometimes people just need to hang out and they're not going to invite you to everything. And so yeah, I haven't really struggled with that, but like I've seen both sides very clearly, and how the
Mm-hmm.
jealousy side can destroy the whole friend group, like in and of itself. I've totally seen that happen before.
Yeah, that's definitely real. And I feel like for me, like I can struggle with it like to an extent. Like I don't feel like I've ever been like outright just like jealous of another friend group, but
Mhm.
there will be times like even sometimes like within our friend group when like I hang out with certain people and then other people hang out with other people, it's kind of like, I'm almost like, hmm, like I guess we're just clicky and like we don't like all hang out sometimes. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's making sense, but like then I just realized, you know what, like we're not all gonna hang out at the same time. Like
Mhm.
may hang out with this person. Like right now, we're hanging out to do the podcast, and I've hung out with some of the other girls to do the podcast, and then like you've hung out with some of the other girls, and
Mhm.
that's okay. Like we're not all gonna be able to hang out at the same time, and
Yeah.
that's just the reality of it. Like
Yeah.
schedules don't always align, and sometimes like it's nice to just have one-on-one time. And like something I've had to realize is that you know what, like you can't always be included in everything. And like even in other friend groups, like
Mhm.
I'll see people like maybe at my church or one of my other youth groups hanging out like outside of those events, and I'll think, dang, I wish I could be in that group. And then I'll realize, you know what, like you have your groups.
Mhm.
Like everybody has like their group, and that's okay. You're not going to be able to be a part of every group. Like, you're not going to
Mm-hmm.
be everybody's best friend. Like, if you were everybody's best friend, you would be drained and you wouldn't be able to pour into any of those relationships well. And so, something I've
Mm-hmm.
just had to realize over time is that, you know what, like, you can't be friends with everyone, and not every relationship is going to be on the same level at every season. And, it's okay for other people to have a relationship and, like, you not be a part of that.
Yeah.
Like, and that's something that I haven't necessarily, like, sometimes I'll think those thoughts and I won't even be comprehending the fact that I'm thinking about it, just because I feel like I struggle with FOMO so much.
Mm,
Like, just, fearing that, like, I'm missing out on something. And so, like, I'll have to, like, really catch those thoughts and be like, hey, like, it's okay. Like, it's
yeah.
okay if people are hanging out. It's okay if I'm not part of that friend group. Like, okay that I don't have, like, the best friendships within that friend group. Like,
Yeah. And I think with friend groups, depending on how big it is, like say it's 4 or 5 people, that's a smaller friend group. But, within those friend groups, everybody's different. And so some
mm-hmm.
people can do really well with having a couple of friend groups and just bouncing around and being, you know, with a bunch of people. But some people really need that, like, just one on one. Like, they can't really do the whole group thing. So, a couple of close friends is sometimes, like, it's different for everybody. So, like, if you see two best friends and they're in a friend group, they might be best friends and they're in that friend group, but like that's okay, It's different for
Mm-hmm.
everybody. So you don't need to be like, why can't my relationship look that close or look that good? It's different for everybody, and you know, that's one thing I've realized. Like, spending, some people need like that one-on-one time, and some people are totally okay with just the group stuff. It
Mm-hmm.
really depends.
Yeah, and then there's certain seasons where you connect with certain people. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like when I'm going through something, like, I tend to feel closer to the people that I know have gone through things that are similar. And so, like, I never want somebody else to feel like they aren't, like, valued as much just because I'm, like, hanging out with somebody else more. And like, I, like, want to realize that even for myself too. Like, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
other people just need that one-on-one time to connect, and, like, that doesn't have to always include me, and that's okay, because, like, there are times I don't always include other people, and that's just the reality of relationships. Like, there's so many different dynamics at play, and if we all just spend our time, like, comparing who hangs out with who, and, like, who hangs out more and who has more time and who, like, gets to do these fun things, like, you're just gonna spiral and you're just gonna feel, like, so drained worrying about that.
Yeah. And I think if, it gets to the point where you're sending a text being like, it hurt me when you hung out, I feel like that's an unhealthy point. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if it's like intentional, like they're hanging out, sharing their location, like it's very different if they're like hanging out because they don't like you. But if they're just hanging out because they like hanging out and you're starting to send that text of, it hurt me when, I think it really depends on the situation. But when it's not like, intentional,
Mm-hmm.
I that is one thing that, like, I think can get so out of hand so quickly. And at that point, you've already started to burn that bridge because you made it into something it's not. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing I really try to be careful of. Like, yeah, I used to struggle with FOMO, but like recently and in the past like couple of years, I've been like, it's not what it is. And I've been content, with building relationships in one friend group versus the other. Like, I'm going to be closer with some people and I'm just not going to have as meaningful relationships with other people. But as long as, you know, I'm doing what I can do to be a good friend, like calling them, checking up on them, still trying to maintain a friendship. There's different levels of friendship and you're not going to be best friends with everyone, like you said. So, you know, just it depends on, yeah, the person and the relationship you're trying to get out of it, because some people, personalities, you can spend 2 hours with them and that's the max. But then there's some people you can go on a 2 week trip with them and
Mm-hmm.
still spend another week with them. Like, it just, it's different for everybody.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, like, yeah, like you said, like, half the time it's like a you issue. Like, if you are feeling jealous of other people hanging out and you're jealous of this other friend group because you feel like you're not a part, like, as much a part of it as you wish you were, that's usually more of an issue on you for like being jealous and wanting to be a part of that than it is on them like not including you. Which I mean, there are obvious like exceptions to this. Like sometimes there are people that are just mean and like are discluding people just to be mean, but like a lot of times like the
It's
issue
not
is
that.
in our heart and we need to like have a heart check. Okay, am I just, being selfish and being jealous here?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's okay. I think it's okay to be like, "Oh, dang, that would have been fun if I was there."
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with that. It becomes, something that's a problem when, you're telling yourself lies about it
Mhm.
and you're starting to believe those things, and then, maybe bitterness or something small like that starts to creep in, or maybe you make a joke about it like, "Oh yeah, cuz they hang out all the time," or you become passive with them. That's when
Mhm.
I think it becomes a problem. And like that's just, even making those jokes around those people, you're not going to be best friends with everyone, and that's
Mhm.
that's okay. And I don't know, I just, for me, that's just such a, when people do that, I don't know, I think it can be really hurtful, because you know you're just over here trying to build a good relationship with this person, and then someone who just turns it into something it's not. Like, those kind of things can just be so disheartening, to walk through.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, yeah, it's something like over the past 2 years, I've grown so much in, just like you were saying. Like, I definitely think like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, like if I would have seen certain people that I was friends with like hanging out without me, that would have really hurt me. And I would have like totally spiraled in my head and been like, okay, they hate me. But then, like, now I've gotten to a point where, like, if I see two people that I'm, like, friends with hanging out, I'll be like, oh, I'm so happy that they had that time to, like,
Yeah.
connect. And it's okay because I have time to connect with other people one on one. And I think it's okay. Like, honestly, I think it's healthy for a friend group to, like, not always hang out together. Like, I think it's important to be able to have those times where people in the friend group hang out individually because that's growing those relationships stronger, and then when you're all together, you can grow together. And so I think that that's
Mm-hmm.
honestly important.
Yeah, like recently with like our friend group, I've been trying, like, it was kind of a lot of like us together, but now, since a couple of people are gone and going to be going off to college, I've been trying to like do things one on one, just because I've been friends with some of you guys for several years and I didn't even know some of y'all's testimony. So I was like, just because like we weren't, we got deep and like, into things, but like never like the, what's your story.
Mhm.
I mean, we still had a really meaningful friendship, but I think,
Mhm.
knowing those things, and like, yeah, you could share that in like the whole group, but I think, one on one, you can open up a lot more, and I think that's a really great thing, like godly friends
Mhm.
and things like that. Being able to share your testimony with friends is such a great thing, and I think that is kind of more of a a one on one thing.
Exactly. And yeah, like you were saying, it's like, yeah, we'd had so many meaningful conversations
Mhm.
and like we kind of knew like a lot of like the pieces of each other's stories, but you never necessarily hear like start to finish everything that happens unless you really take the time to do that. And I think that that's, something that's really valuable to be able to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, this question is a little different from the other ones. Do you think comparison is something that a person will always struggle with to an extent, or do you think it's something that you can fully overcome?
I think comparison in and of itself, I wouldn't classify as like super sinful. I think comparison becomes a sin issue when we are telling ourselves lies and becoming bitter, or you know letting it become an idol, coveting, that kind of thing. So I think comparison is going to be like, those thoughts that just like, say you're walking through the store and you see someone, that's like really pretty, and you're like, oh dang, I wish I looked like them, or something like that. I think comparison, you're always gonna have those kind of thoughts, or oh, I wish I had that, or like, oh, I wish I could buy this, or I wish, just putting that I wish instead of you know putting the I in front of everything. I think it's something where we should become, oh. I'm happy for them, or
Mm,
that's really great that they have that. Like, I think we live in such a self hyphenated like culture where it's like
we do.
self care, honestly, we put self in front of everything. And so
Yeah.
we do.
I know,
Um,
right?
it's just such a self hyphenated culture that we live in. And, when we do that, we're going to become selfish, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you could, to someone, they could maybe like compare themselves to me, but to me, I'm like, oh, I wish I had all the things they had. Like, comparison is just, I think something you can always struggle with, but,
Mm-hmm.
there's very different extremes. Like, there's the occasional thought, like, oh, that'd be nice if I had. Oh, and then there's the coveting, making this an idol,
Mm-hmm.
sinning to get it, kind of thing. So, um, I think comparison will always kind of be a struggle, but that's a struggle that can be overcome, and it doesn't have to be at such a simple state.
Yeah. Personally, I kind of agree with like what you said. Like I think the only like how I would say it is just that like I think it's something you will always struggle with, but you can consistently overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you may struggle with it every single day, but every single day you can overcome it that day.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a thing. Like, maybe one day you'll think like as like you said, as you're walking through the store, you just see like some girl and she's like really pretty. You may first think, "Oh man, I wish I was that pretty." But then you can change your thoughts and be like, like she's so pretty. I should go compliment her like she's so pretty.
Yeah.
And then just remember that like you're still beautiful too. Like you have value and worth. And I think that's just something like yeah, you may have those thoughts like all throughout your life, but as long as like you're catching them right away and like shifting your mindset and thinking about others and not just like yourself, then you're able to overcome that.
Yeah, that's really good.
And something like I've always heard is just like comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm.
And I think that that's just something you totally have to remember and consistently remind yourself of. Because, like, if you want to have joy and like lasting joy, like, you have to live in like confidence and contentment in what you have. Like, if you're constantly looking and thinking about what you don't have, like, oh, I wish I had this or I wish I had that, then you're never going to be content and you're never going to feel joy.
Yeah. And no matter where we're at, financially, the possessions we have, I think even if you have all the things you want, you know, I think, there should be prayers that are like,
Mm-hmm.
God, help me to be content. God, I've heard like people who like give up everything, As Christians, I think we should want to give everything we have instead of wanting and desiring all these things. We should be willing to give up everything we have.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I look at it that way, as, oh, I wish I had this, and then you think of, people who sacrifice so much just to worship the Lord. Ooh, let
Yeah,
me not do that again,
I
kind of
know.
thing.
Yeah. It's definitely hard. And I feel like even for me, like I'll so often like see people with like certain things that are like nice brands and I'm like, man, like I wish like I had those clothes with like those brands. And then I realize, you know what? Like I have lots of clothes and I have like lots of options. Some people don't even have any options.
Yeah.
And like that's something I just have to remind myself of. And like I have to pray through that a lot. Honestly, like
Mm.
contentment and like when it comes to like what I own is something I can struggle a lot with. And
Yeah.
that's a whole nother topic we could
Yeah.
cover. But I definitely feel like, prayer through it is so important when it comes to like
Yeah.
comparison. Like you're not gonna really overcome it unless you're praying and like consistently thanking God for what you do have. And I feel like that's important. Not
Mm.
only like praying that God would like bring you contentment and that you would be at peace, but also like intentionally thanking Him for the things He has blessed you with.
Yeah, like, you can wake up and be like, oh, time to put on the outfit that I wore last week. Super great, Or, you can wake up and be like, God, use me today. Like, surrender everything. Even like, even like the simple things like, God, just use me today however you want. Like, those kind of things, instead of just waking up and thinking about, oh, what am I going to do today? No, I think, it's waking up and being like, God, how will you use me today? Like, how can I further your kingdom? Instead of, so when we look at it that way, it becomes like all the little things like, oh, I don't have this brand of, just, it becomes so worthless when we fix our eyes on the Lord. And I think, there really is a joy in that. And I've recently, just been able to feel that, just like the fact that we can wake up and God's got us covered, and, we can just trust Him, and that, you know, like we're not even supposed to worry about tomorrow. I think that's such a gift. And if we're living in that, why should we be living in the I want this kind of mindset?
Yeah, for sure. And like with your sister Addie, like we talked about in the podcast about how like we shouldn't be worried about what other people think of us. But we're kind of more talking about like why we shouldn't be worried about like, possessions and like what other people have versus what we have, or what other people look like versus what we look like. Because like in the end, like it's all temporary, it's all pointless, it's all futile. Like chasing after all these things, chasing after like certain standards in looks, certain standards in clothes, like it all in the end, like really doesn't matter. Like with Addie, we talked about how the opinions of others don't matter, but like here it's more just like, you know, what we value really doesn't matter unless it's like what God values.
Yeah, I think with all these things, idols and all that, or just simple things like comparison. Comparison starts out as something so small, but can be turn into something like bitterness, because I think the enemy can put all these things in front of us, and we'll wish we had that. And those types of things can be put there to distract us, and you know if we catch that first glimpse, and then we that's all we're focusing on, then you can just go so many wrong ways with that. So it's like, yeah, there's going to be comparison in your life. You're going to struggle with that every day. But just being like, oh, I wish I had that, but I have this, and this is where God has me, and trusting His plan and His timing, because what God has in store for us is so much more than what we probably think. Or you can look where I could look where I was at a couple years ago, and never would have thought I'd have the friends I had now, just because it's like in those moments you don't see what God has. So you're gonna look at other people around you and be like, well, they have this, I don't understand why I don't. God's gonna bring you out of that, and whether that's He has you in a season of no friendship or with friendship, it whatever it may be, you're gonna be able to compare, but choosing to look at the truth and realize, God has you where He has you for a reason, and maybe sometimes He just says, wait.
Yeah, and just choosing joy in that season. And also earlier, I meant to comment on what you were saying. Like you were just cooking over there when you said like the thing about like instead of focusing on what you want to do today, like focus on what God wants to do today. Like just waking up and not thinking, okay, like what can I do today that's all about me? Like how can I serve me? How can like I feel happy, and how can I have fun today? Like focus on like, okay, what can I do to serve God? What can I do to please Him? What does God want me to do today? Like ask Him, like, hey, like, reveal to me your will for me today. Like simple things like that. And even just those simple prayers, like those prayers will bring contentment and joy throughout your day, because you're seeking God's will over your own will, and that brings so much joy.
Yeah. One thing that I found super like helpful with comparing, or like maybe it's a day where I just I'm kind of struggling with like self-esteem or just low with that, like something that has been super helpful is like worship, like stepping back and then just like worshiping or listening to worship music, how that can just change your mindset. Like, say you're just, the next time you're having a bad day, with self-esteem, maybe just take a minute to like worship God, and like instead of being like, oh, I hate this about myself, I don't like this about myself, maybe write down, who God says you are. And then after that, one thing I've done has been like, God, you are, letting, because like we are supposed to, let God know what He is, and doing that, like that's something that can be really helpful when you're stuck in that I don't like myself today kind of thing.
Definitely, I agree. Like whenever I have like super like hard days where I'm really just feeling like, low, sometimes those days like I want to play some like relatable song that feels like it's like talking about like, how everybody else has it like better than you, and like it can be so tempting to like play those playlists, those like depressing playlists, and then I like, I decide like, what, I'm gonna play my worship playlist, and I'm gonna like, focus on God rather than on me, and I always just come out feeling like so much more joyful.
And on days like that, in situations where there's, you feel really judged or you feel really insecure, we are our biggest enemy. The things I think about myself, you know, maybe someone who was in a spot to slightly judge me probably wouldn't even think that. Like,
Yeah.
it's most of the time it's in our head. And like, yeah, you may not like some things about yourself, but as Christians, we're called to so much more than, to sit there and wallow in our insecurity. Like, yes, those are real things, and I'm not trying to be like, oh, if you're insecure, just like forget about it. Like, God says you're worthy. Well, it's like not staying in that spot is what I'm trying to get at. It's like don't stay in that spot of, like, yeah, we're gonna struggle, but we're called to so much more than that.
Yeah. And really like you were saying, like we are our biggest critic. Like I remember like especially like a year ago, like when I was definitely more insecure, like I would, look at photos of myself, or like I did a photo shoot with one of my friends like a year ago. It was with Avi, and like Avi is just so gorgeous, so photogenic, like
It's true.
like yeah, Leah agrees. Like she just never looks bad in a photo, and it's not fair because Avi will try to take bad photos of us all the time, and it's so mean, but it's also really funny. And she's so good at like capturing us in like really bad photos. But like whenever anybody tries to like get a bad photo of her, like it's just impossible because she looks good in like the bad photo anyway.
It's true.
Yeah, it's not fair. But anyways, so like I would like look at photos and I'd be like, "Eesh, like I look so bad in that photo," and I'd be like, "Oh my," and like Avi just looks gorgeous in that photo, and then like she would be over there like thinking the same thing though. She'd be like, "Ugh, why does my face look like that? Oh my gosh, you just are posed so perfectly," and I'm like. The fact that we're both sitting there just criticizing ourselves in those photos, and we both hate the photo, but because of the way we look, not because of the way the other person looks, just shows like how much more we care about what we look like than what anybody else does. And sitting there comparing ourselves to somebody like it's so stupid and so pointless because nobody else is judging you like that, and especially not God. Like God created us exactly how he wants us, and like with so much purpose and value, and sitting there like criticizing like all the ways we look is like criticizing the way like God made us.
Yeah. I heard this thing. It's like God created the earth in like 6 days. Yeah, 6 days. He took 9 months to create us. Like, if that doesn't speak
7 months for
volume,
you.
yeah, I was born 2 months early. If that doesn't speak volumes, I don't know what will.
Exactly.
Like, if you were supposed to look any different, you would. So, like, you look great. You
Exactly.
look great.
But yeah, this verse kind of reminds me of what we were just saying. Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. Like we're supposed to first like seek after his plans and to fulfill the plans he has for us. Like he created us with a purpose. Like he didn't just create us to sit and like worry about what other people think of us and like constantly try to like compare ourselves. Like he created us to reflect him and to fulfill out our purpose.
Yeah. That's good. It's like we weren't made, like, as Christians, We are called to so much more than to sit in our, insecurity and bring others down with us. Like, no, we were called to go out and win others for Christ. And so when we think about that, like, yeah, I may not like my hair type or I may not like, you name it. Like, when we think about, like there are souls out there to be saved, or there's just so many things we could be doing to further the kingdom of heaven. And then, your insecurities become so much less when you're in scripture. Like, one thing I've like realized, the more I like read the Bible, or the more I pray, or the more I worship, the more I want to. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just one of those things where it's like when you're stuck in, insecurity in those seasons of, just really, really struggling with things, you're not going to want to get up and win others for Christ. It's just, you just don't have that motivation. But, when we're consistent, we do have that motivation to do those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like I definitely agree. Like the more like I'm in God's word, the more I want to be in God's word. The more like I spend time in prayer, the more I want to spend time in prayer. And I think like it can even be that way when it comes to like thinking of others first.
Yeah.
Like, the more like I intentionally make the effort to compliment someone rather than sit in jealousy, the more like I will notice things about other people and think to compliment them rather than focus on me. And I think like that honestly just brings so much joy and brings you more confidence to like take the time to think of others and to build them up and to remind them that they're beautiful and that God created them beautifully rather than just, sitting and staring at them and like thinking of all the like qualities that they have that you wish that you had, you know, taking the time to like, bring them up and just be a light.
Yeah, comparison can be turned around and, used to uplift someone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so for those of you that are watching the podcast, you're probably wondering why I'm suddenly back in my camper and why I'm suddenly alone. Well, Aaliyah and I lost power yesterday while we were in the middle of recording for the podcast. Our lovely Indiana weather hit, and we had a nice storm that took out the power. And yeah, so we were not able to finish the episode together yesterday, but thankfully we were like pretty much done anyway. So, like, the rest of it, I'm just gonna kind of wrap up on my own here. But yeah, sorry for that. I'm really disappointed that we weren't able to finish it together, but it'll still be great. It'll be okay. And I'm glad that we at least got to record with each other for like 45 minutes or so. So that at least was a blessing. Now, before I close, I just want to kind of share with you guys like 4 steps and 4 like actions that you can take to really just be mindful and to really just take intentional steps towards being content. So, step 1 is just change your attitude. Like, as Aaliyah and I have been saying, like, when you take the time to think about others and to just hype them up and to be happy for them and their successes and, just in their characteristics rather than thinking about all the things that you don't have or like you wish that you had more qualities or features that they had. Like when you just choose to like go up to somebody and compliment them and, think about how God has blessed them rather than how God hasn't blessed you. I think that's the mindset shift that you have to really have. And you just really have to change your attitude about it and just choose to have a good attitude about the successes of others and not just think of the successes of others as your fails. Because that's just a lie. Just because God has blessed somebody else doesn't mean that you are now lacking. Like, God has made you exactly how He wants you and has put things into your life exactly how He wants them. Now, step 2, it's pretty obvious, but just chase Christ. When you're chasing after Jesus and you're chasing His will rather than like your own selfish desires, like naturally you're going to be more content because with Jesus, like that brings contentment. When you're choosing to chase after things that are of God rather than things that are of yourself, like you're naturally just going to have that Jesus glow and that Jesus joy and that Christ-centered confidence. And with Christ-centered confidence just comes like a glow about you. Like others will be able to notice, and you'll be able to notice it in yourself. Like you'll just have contentment in areas around you. Now, step 3 is choose your mindset. You have a choice when it comes to how you feel about something. You can choose to live with like a bad attitude and with like, just self doubt and wallowing in just pity and, pointing out all your flaws and insecurities. But if you're choosing to be grateful for what God has blessed you with, and you're choosing to look at yourself as beautiful, then that's how you're going to feel. When you're choosing to live in a certain way and you're choosing to believe something, eventually you will believe it. So if you keep just letting the lies like come into your mind and just believing them, if you're letting the devil lie to you and tell you all these things about how you are not worthy or you are not made in the image of God or how like you are not enough or you're not beautiful, if you're letting the enemy tell you these lies and you're believing them, then that's partially your fault for letting those lies just remain rooted in your thoughts. Like you have to intentionally take those, discard them, and replace them with things that are of God and are things that He has called you in Scripture, like chosen and beautiful and wonderful, and all of these things. Like you have to believe them and you have to choose to believe them. And the last step, step 4, is cherish your blessings. You have to be thankful and grateful for what you have. God has blessed you with so much. Sometimes we like overlook all the things that we're blessed with, but we have to intentionally think about those blessings. Like sometimes I'll just be sitting in pity and I'll think, man, like I don't have all the things I want. Like why has God blessed so many other people and not me? And then I'll think, no, I need to be thankful and I need to pray to God and thank Him for the things that I have. And when I first sit down to pray that prayer, like I can't think of anything. Like I can't think of things to really be grateful for. But then once I just really start thinking about all the ways God has blessed me with, it's like I almost can't stop. And the thoughts just keep coming. Oh, wait, but God has done this in my life. And God has blessed me with, my house and my home and my family and all of these different things suddenly like flood my mind, and I'll be thinking about like the most random thing. I'm like, God has blessed me with a beautiful day today. God has blessed me with a beautiful green yard. I'm just looking out the window and seeing our grass. It looks really nice. But anyways, like I'll just like think of all these random things. Like God blessed us with a beautiful rainstorm yesterday, and like as I was driving home, like I saw some lightning way off in the distance, and I was just thanking God even for the lightning because it was just beautiful and it showed His power. And I think that sometimes we don't thank God for the ways He's blessed us, even if they're so small. We are blessed beyond measure, and we just have to intentionally thank Him and intentionally take the time to thank Him for those blessings. But also cherish your blessings with humility. Like, don't go around like bragging about all the ways God has blessed you. Like, you can thank Him and you can tell others about the way God has blessed you, but do it with humility. Don't live in a prideful way where you're just like, God's blessed me more than He's blessed you. No, that's not a good way to live. But choose to live in that joy and that thankfulness, but do it in humility. Now, hopefully, I made it easy for you to remember. I made all of my points start with a C, so I'll just go over them one more time just to remind you guys again. You have to change your attitude, chase Christ, choose your mindset, and cherish your blessings. Those are just my 4 steps. And obviously, those are just my opinions. Obviously, there are so many other ways that you can go about living with contentment and learning to not compare yourself to others. But those are just 4 steps that I would recommend and that I've seen work well for me in my life. But obviously, everybody's different and everybody has their own ways that they can handle things like this. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Living Life for Real podcast. I'm sad that Aaliyah can't be here with us for the close, but I'm thankful that she has been able to be here with us for the rest of the episode. And I'm sure that you guys have all learned something from her. She has so much wisdom to impart, and I'm so thankful that she got to be on the podcast, even for a short amount of time. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. You have an amazing day, and I'll see you in a few weeks.